I can't think that some of the policies we've enacted recently are truly in the best interest of Nebraska. I think they are in the best interest of interest groups, certainly. We have to make decisions that put people first. This idea that government can be run like a business is not a sustainable concept.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Dan Parsons Show. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Hey, coming up on today's show, Josh Livingston, candidate for Nebraska Legislative District 8 in Central Omaha. But before I introduce Josh, just a comment about a show we did last week. If you've not seen it yet, our Go Fact Yourself episode on the Epstein-Trump cover-up, I'd encourage you to go check it out, because it seems like everybody else is. After just a few days, it's already vaulted into the fourth most popular episode of 2025. To celebrate, here's an exchange I had with one of our fans. I hope they're fans on YouTube. Jeff Helton, 9510, said, "Must be a whiner show. That's our president until 2028. Followed by 4 laughing, crying emojis. So I responded to the gentleman, "Do you support releasing the files to the public?" And he responded, "I support our president and those chosen to serve our country. They can make those decisions." So I couldn't help myself. I replied, "So I assume for consistency, you would have supported President Nixon not releasing the White House audio tapes that ended up revealing his crimes against the nation." He responded back, "I don't argue with liberals. I trust our president. He's a good man." Okay, I'll leave it at that for now. But hey, jump on over to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and join the conversation. I could use the assist. Okay, here's my interview with Josh Livingston, candidate for Nebraska Legislative District 8. Enjoy. Whether you like it or not, the 2026 election season it may seem like a long way off, but announcements for candidates are well underway, even though we're only midway through 2025. And the most unique legislative body in America, the Nebraska Unicameral, will elect roughly half of its members next year. And so it's my pleasure to welcome one of those candidates to the Dan Parsons Show, Mr. Josh Livingston. Josh, welcome aboard.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm a big fan of your show.
Oh, well, you're very kind. That's I appreciate that. Well, Josh is a candidate for Nebraska Legislature. And just a few weeks ago, Josh, you kicked off your campaign for Legislative District 8, which is located in Central Omaha. You're the first candidate to announce a run for District 8. Currently held by Megan Hunt, who is not eligible to run due to term limits. Let me just fill in a little bit of bio here, and you can fill in what I've missed. After graduating from Creighton Law School, Josh was the deputy county attorney for Sarpy County. He currently works as a family law attorney in Omaha, helping people through tough moments like custody and divorce. So I guess, Josh, maybe first of all, fill in any bio stuff that maybe you'd like to highlight, and then we'll get into why the Nebraska Legislature.
Yeah, of course. So a little bit of background. I worked, as you mentioned, I worked for the Sarpy County Attorney's Office, and what I did there was child support work. So I was a child support attorney at Sarpy County for about 5.5 years, and for about a year before that, I worked in Douglas County doing that work.
Okay.
And it gave me a really good opportunity to learn about what families are experiencing in Nebraska. Obviously, most of the families that are involved in the child support program are receiving state aid. So I got really in-depth knowledge about how the Department of Health and Human Services works with respect to that, and also a lot of experience in the courtroom with families. Subsequently, I left and I started working as a private attorney doing, like you mentioned, family law cases. I love working with these families. I love being the opportunity to look at a situation that's probably the hardest situation a lot of people experience in their lives and be a voice of calm, a voice of reason, and a voice of guidance through those circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that is very important. And so, how do those skills, Josh, equip you to serve in the Nebraska legislature?
Yeah, great question. So what I have learned, obviously, as a lawyer, I have a very strong understanding of the law. I understand not only why laws are written, but what issues that may come up with certain ones. And being part of the legislature, we're going to be passing laws that are going to be subject to judicial scrutiny. So we want to make sure that the laws that we're writing are going to pass that scrutiny. I've also learned about the importance of advocacy. I talk about advocacy being the right temperament, being able to build bridges, and being able to get things done at a time when you don't think that's going to happen. I have honed my advocacy through my child support work, through my family law work, through other legal cases that I've taken on. And I'm really eager to bring that advocacy to the legislature.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are the most pressing issues to our state as you launch your campaign and you start to dive into this? And again, as I mentioned, we've got a few months to sort all this out. But by the way, I think it's smart to get in early and start, since I assume, Josh, it's your first time running for political office. I guess I didn't ask, but
yeah, this is my first time running. I've had a really good opportunity over the past about year now to really get involved in some of these advocacy issues,
Yeah.
some of these real, I think we'll talk about it down the road, but some of the abortion issues.
Yes.
And I have seen what good can come from people using their voice, from saying, we don't like the way this is happening, we wanted to fix it. I've started knocking on doors. You're right, it's early. And I've been knocking on doors and I've been getting to know people in the neighborhood. And the biggest concern that I keep hearing is the fear of the unknown. We know what issues exist. We know what we're scared of. But what's happened with the budget bill out in Washington is it's created more uncertainty here in Nebraska. And we really need to figure out common sense answers to these problems, and also what the breadth of these problems looks like. I talk to people at their door and they say, what's going to happen with Medicaid? And they're not on Medicaid, all of them, but I mean, those type of issues affect each and every one of us. And when we don't know an answer to something, we get a little bit scared. And I think we would serve people better by providing some of that clarity.
You had mentioned the abortion issue, and let's talk about that for a moment. Last year, you stood with 29 doctors at the Nebraska Supreme Court to protect access to reproductive health care, helping ensure that last year's initiative to expand abortion rights or abortion access, was on the ballot. That there was a hell of a lot of money spent on those ballot issues on abortion last year. That initiative failed, receiving just under 49% of voter support. Of course, as our well-informed viewers and listeners know, here on the Dan Parsons Show, the Dobbs decision back in 2022, the Supreme Court ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, eliminating the constitutional right to abortion. And now this decision allowing individual states to regulate or ban abortion. And so, yeah, there's been a ton of significant legal, practical challenges to abortion access across the U.S. Do you see, because you're obviously interested in that issue, what do you see? Are there any more bills to come before the legislature to deal with this issue? Or have we seen that and things have calmed down now and we can all kind of get used to this new world that we're living in?
Well, I don't know if we're ever going to get used to it, but I talk about a little bit of the predictability, and what I really wanted to stand for, in addition to expanding access to healthcare, because to me that is extraordinarily important. When I had 29 doctors telling us this healthcare matters, it matters to families, it matters to women, and it matters to children, it seemed like a no-brainer to me to fight for that right. The other really important issue that I saw with that was the legislative initiative process. They stood out. You said a lot of money was spent on that. A lot of people signed for what they believed in. And I talk a lot about the voice of the people. And, we're not going to agree on every single issue. That's just impossible. But enough people signed a petition and said, I want the opportunity to have this on the ballot in both directions. As much as I would disagree with having the different option, both petitions should have been on the ballot. And I really took issue with any idea that would challenge the opportunity to vote on issues. It wasn't a matter of legislate. It wasn't a matter of the initiative not having enough signatures. There was more than enough signatures. So in addition to fighting for that access to healthcare, for me, it was important to make sure that people had the right to vote. Did the vote come the way that I wanted to? No, of course not. And you talk about predictability. I want to work to make sure that we can make more incremental change in that direction of expanding access to healthcare. I think there's always going to be fights in both directions for what people want. And those fights are good. Those fights are what make democracy work. But the idea that we would not have something on the ballot because one group didn't like it, that was never going to stand for me.
Yeah. Speaking of ballot issues, I think this past session will go down, has gone down, and in us political nerds that talk about it as the session that tried to, if not all out, denied the will of the people in at least three different ballot issues. The Nebraska, the GOP legislature, often with the governor's support, sometimes with at least one Democrat, poked and prodded for changes that would have weakened or reversed three different ballot measures: medical cannabis, paid sick leave, and minimum wage. I guess kind of a two-part question. How concerned are you about that eroding of our democratic right to petition our government through the ballot initiative, time honored in Nebraska, the second house, if you will, and then those votes being denied or at least ignored? So how concerned are you, I guess, overall for that ballot initiative process, and then whatever positions you want to talk about on any of those three issues, because we're not done dealing with them yet. So anyway, have at it.
They're here. So I would tell you that my belief is that, you mentioned the second house, the people are the first house. That is, for me, that is an unflinching truth.
Yeah.
And ballot initiatives, not everybody gets the opportunity to serve. Not everybody gets to be in a position to serve. And the ballot initiative process to me is so extremely important. And when we saw those issues go in front of our legislature and our legislature started eroding that is a very concerning thing for me. I talk about that the government is the voice of the people, not the voice of government. And while our leaders, they may not agree with the initiatives that get passed, right, or get brought before them, it is the job of all of us to implement what the people are telling us. And when issues like paid sick leave are very clear, what was put on their desk was very clear, and to start backing off on that to me sets kind of a concerning precedent too. I understand that there's competing interests with respect to how that works, but the directive and the mandate that they were given was clear. Pass paid sick leave in the way that we put it in front of you. And when I'm in the legislature, I'm going to be the voice that's reminding of that. I'm going to be fighting for that voice. I'm going to say, look, the people have told us, they have said this is what they want. We don't need to tell them they didn't know what they want, because if we start with that, then we start to have to question whether we should have even been elected.
Well, yeah, that's right. What else didn't they get right?
Yeah, what else were they wrong about in this process? And I have to trust that a majority of the people, whether I agree with it or not, at least use their voice. And I will continue to fight and advocate for the positions that I believe in. But if I'm given a mandate, I'm going to follow that mandate.
Yeah. Well, and all three of those issues, certainly, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, all of them, but we've had the medical marijuana folks on quite a bit here on the show this past months. And it wasn't close. 71% of Nebraskans said we want this, and as I recall, the other two ballot measures also were not close. And so I think that's what's frustrating. And for those of us maybe who don't follow the legislature in these issues as closely as you and I are political nerds in the audience. But so I think it's confusing for people. It's like, wait a minute, what do we have this for? If it's only going to, these aren't suggestions.
They're not suggestions. And again, what did I vote for if I'm not getting it?
Yeah.
And you say political nerds, we know about this because, we live in this world.
That's right.
Even whether you know about it or not, it's going to impact you. And I talk a lot about making sure that we have access to healthcare. And I know the implication with access to healthcare is a lot of the abortion rights, but from a medical marijuana perspective, that is healthcare. There's doctors that are prescribing it. The ballot initiative had to do with prescribing from doctors. And again, we cannot be caught up in this world where we're telling doctors, as legislators, we're telling doctors we know more than you. I don't know more than doctors, and I'm glad that I have doctors that tell me these things. And just as much as you wouldn't want doctors coming into your profession telling you to do something, I trust the people who know what's happening. And when medical marijuana gets passed, like you said, by an overwhelming majority, and we're putting restrictions on how that gets passed, not only does that erode the trust in the process, that erodes the process. And that's a big, scary thought for me.
Yeah. You don't have to get into, because there's plenty of chatter behind the scenes of potential other ballot issues coming next year, either in response to some of these issues we've been talking about or others. And so any thought, feel free to comment on any of that if you're aware of some of those things. But what are, I guess, maybe the other question that's maybe more fair to ask, Josh, is what are some of the most important issues that you are going to be talking about in your campaign for the legislature?
Yeah. Well, thank you. And, for me, the biggest issue is ensuring that families are prioritized. I envision a Nebraska which enables families to be successful and enables everyone to be successful. My goal is to ensure that families are heard, supported, and respected. And to me, that looks like prioritizing education, making sure that public schools are fully funded, that healthcare has comprehensive and affordable access, that our neighborhoods are safe, and that we look for opportunities which make Nebraskans thrive. It's Nebraska for everybody, not just Nebraska for some.
Yeah. Well, and we obviously know that there's going to be continued talk about the budget, even though we passed the biennial budget this past session.
Yeah.
There are still concerns about tax receipts not coming in as strong as we thought they might. And the governor's already said that he's going to suggest a 10% cut across state government. And as you mentioned earlier, that's on top of what the federal government in the big, beautiful bill, which we're all still trying to figure out what the implications are going to be.
Especially those that voted on it.
Well, yes, even those who voted on it. But I think the overall theme is we're going to have less money as a government, as a state government, to use in the years ahead. How concerned are you, I guess, as a potential legislator in the upcoming session about that funding, that shortage of funding across the board?
Yeah, shortage of funding is always a concern for states. It's always a concern for government bodies. That concern, I think, became exponentially greater when this bill passed, which created uncertainty for local entities. You mentioned that the governor has indicated 10% cuts across the board, and 10% from DHHS, that is going to hurt the most vulnerable population in our state. Yes. There's no part of DHHS that doesn't help vulnerable portions of our state. I can't figure out where 10% is going to come from that doesn't hurt people. And I get that finding funding is hard. I get that the money is hard, but we have to make decisions that put people first. This idea that government can be run like a business is just, to me, it's not a sustainable concept. Government is meant to make sure that the people are taken care of, that there's funding for the things we need. And when we're scared about that idea, and when we're looking at an opportunity to not have that kind of funding, the answer isn't cutting funding from those who need it the most. The legislative body is going to be tasked with finding ways to make up those shortfalls. I mean, we dealt with that in the last one. We had to take from the rainy day fund, and then the tax receipts were low. I think some would argue that the medical marijuana bill may help to incorporate some of the tax benefits. But I think what happens at this point is we need to look for some real common sense legislation, and not something that's just reactionary. I think there was an article that came out recently where Governor Heinemann mentioned that he had never seen 10% cuts in a time when there wasn't an economic downturn pending. So either we have an economic downturn on the horizon, or we are not looking for the right cuts. We need to hold, as the legislative body, we obviously need to make sure we hold the governor accountable to make sure that the cuts are reasonable. And then we also need to fight and advocate as that's our legislative responsibility.
Yeah, good point. I like that you're using former Governor Dave Heinemann as an example, because that was I saw that quote too recently, and it wasn't like Dave Heinemann was a crazy spending governor. I mean,
No.
So for him to say that, yeah, that's something I've never seen that's concerning.
It was striking to me. I mean, the idea that, again, we're not facing an economic downturn, I hope, but we're acting like we are. And I get that we have to make tough decisions.
Sure.
We have to make tough calls. But I think cutting 10% across the board is too vague. I don't think it helps. I think, again, DHHS is a big focus here. DHHS helps a lot of Nebraskans that really need help.
Yes.
And they're doing it on a shoestring budget right now. And I mean, I've worked with DHHS. I've worked against DHHS. I want to make sure that there's enough money to do the things that they do to help our people.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other issues that I wanted to chat about for a little bit, Josh, is, even though the Nebraska legislature has this terrific reputation as being bipartisan, certainly not as toxic as many other legislative bodies.
What state are we in?
Yeah, exactly. Certainly not the way things are done in Congress.
Yeah.
But there have been moments in the last two sessions that tempers became heated at times, and voices raised, and feelings hurt, and So how can we, and the broader topic of political rhetoric and even violence against that horrific incident where the Minnesota state legislators
terrifying
were assassinated. And so what can we do? And if you've watched and listened to this show, that's one of my themes of how can we bring people together and not drive people apart. So as a prospective state legislator, what can we do to bring people together and take this rhetoric down a notch so that we can hear each other and maybe hear the voices of our constituents and actually get shit done? Yeah.
So listen. I got to start there. We've got to listen. I don't have to agree. I don't have to look at somebody and everything they say to me, I have to agree, but I have to give everybody the dignity of listening. And I would expect some reciprocity there. And, you mentioned at the beginning, and I talked a little bit at the beginning of what I do for work. I'm a family law attorney.
Yeah.
Family law is not exactly one of those fields where everybody gets along very well. Yeah. I live in a world where we have diametrically opposed positions about issues that are extraordinarily important to you. I mean, I could not think of an issue more important than custody of my child.
Yeah.
And I deal with that every day. And I have the opportunity to work with a lot of people in my field who are strong personalities. And I think they would say that I'm a strong personality, but we have a lot of respect for each other. We can come to an agreement. We can look at a situation and get the best out of what's possible. And as an advocate, as a legislator, as an attorney, as a citizen, we are striving to get the best situation that we can out of what's available. I often talk about in my cases, I'm not going to get 0% and I'm not going to get 100%. It's just not going to happen. But if I can work towards incremental change and getting the best outcome for my client, because sometimes my client and the other side don't want the same thing, but they want something similar.
Yep.
So negotiations, working, listening, you understand what the best possible outcome is. And, not everybody walks away feeling great from a legislative bill, from a family law matter. But if you feel that the outcome that you have is moving you in a better direction, that is how we're going to cool the temperature. I remember Joe Biden, when he got inaugurated, talked a lot about cooling the temperature, and that resonated with me. I think we all believe in the things we believe in. We believe strongly about them. And I don't want to discourage anybody from feeling strongly about the things that they do, but also recognize that as we debate these issues, that we need to have civility, we need to be cordial, but we also need to be advocates. We need to make sure that we're not just giving for the sake of nice. We can be polite and disagree. And my experience as an attorney brings me in a position that if somebody yells at me, it's not going to bother me that much because, quite frankly, I'm yelled at quite frequently. And if I was worried about that, then I don't think I'd be cut out for this role. And I think the experience that I have in the background, the experience that I have up to this point, puts me in a position where I can really advocate on behalf of not only my district, but ultimately Nebraskans.
Yeah. That's really well put, Josh, and I hadn't thought about that before. But you're right. I mean, of all professions, you are in the position to bring people together and get an outcome that is most often times beneficial to a joint constituency, and that is the children. And so, yeah, that's I like that.
We're always operating in the best interest of the children.
Yeah.
And as long as me, as long as my practitioners, as long as everybody I work with kind of remember that edict.
Yep.
And if you extrapolate that out, what's the best interest of Nebraska?
Yeah.
And I know we're going to disagree about what the best interest of Nebraska is, but we can work towards outcomes that are in the better interest of Nebraska, because I can't think that some of the policies we've enacted recently are truly in the best interest of Nebraska. I think they are in the best interest of interest groups, certainly. But I think if we can move the needle forward and we can start making changes that you can live with, we're going to get to a position where we can find compromise and we can get better outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of those issues specifically that you'd want to point out to say, man, if I were there, I would not have voted for that?
Obviously, I would have been against any of the trans rights bills that they were offered. I would be very supportive of making sure that children, particularly, are allowed to participate and feel welcome. For me, it's about inclusivity, and I understand that there are people who feel a particular way, and they feel very strongly about how they do, about whether children should participate when trans children should participate in sports. And for me, the opportunity to bring more inclusivity is always going to outweigh excluding groups. There's a way to do it. And I don't have the answer right this second, but I know that a group of us come together with the goal of listening and the goal of coming to a better outcome can really do some good, because I don't want to leave any children feeling like they're not welcome.
Well, yeah. And I think for a lot of people, in addition to treating everyone in this state with dignity and respect, I think the other concern for a lot of people is like, well, how many people are we talking about that this impacts?
I looked it up, and I think don't hold me to this, but my understanding is it's fewer than 10.
Yeah, exactly. And why are we spending? Yeah.
Each one of those 10 matters in a very important way. But I can tell you that there's more than 10 people who are feeling concerns about property taxes. Yeah. I can tell you that there are more than 10 people who are feeling concerns about their work, their health. And I would want to focus our collective legislative energy on issues that benefit the most Nebraskans, that benefit us as a whole. And I want to make sure that those children, the 10 who are being excluded, are included in that conversation, but to focus on that conversation as opposed to the real issues that are out there with respect to the property taxes and everything and our budget shortfall. If we can't pay for schools, we got a much bigger problem than who's going to run track.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Talk a little bit about your district. Again, as we mentioned, Megan Hunt has served will be 8 years now, and not eligible to run again. And of course, a business owner in Dundee, I believe. And so maybe talk a little bit about your district and what your plans are to, as you said, you've started to knock on doors already. And so, talk a little bit about your district and the makeup and how you see this election. As I noted earlier, there's you're the first to announce, I assume, any open seat in the Nebraska legislature, especially in a district in the middle of Omaha, is going to be very competitive. There's going to be a lot of money spent. So however you want to take that question, talk a little bit about your district and the expected campaign that you see coming.
Yeah, of course. So my district, obviously, Megan has done an unbelievable job representing our district. I think she's well loved. I think she's advocated well for the policies of our community, and I'm really sad to see her go. I hope to continue to be a strong, powerful voice like Megan has been. I certainly do things a little bit differently, but that's what makes us all a little bit different. My background is a little bit more directed towards the legal focus and my experience in that background. And so I want to carry on Megan's legacy as best I can. The Dundee Benson area is one of the most amazing parts of Omaha. It is hip, it is fun, it is just politically active. I mean, right across the street was where the Blue Dot started, and we've certainly adopted the Blue Dot. My daughter, when we drove around the area, she'd point out every Blue Dot sign, and I loved that about it. I love the businesses in our area. I want to ensure that Dundee, Benson, and we're up a little bit. When in the redistricting, it went up a little bit towards 90th in the northwest corner. I want to make sure that our community is given an opportunity to thrive. It is doing great. It is a community that supports each other. They have a lot of external support for the rest of the city. It's what we all should strive to be. And I've been knocking on the doors, and it's amazing. I talk to people, and they'll be like, they'll ask questions about my daughter going to school. They'll ask questions about my family. I'm a stranger knocking on their door, and they're wanting to know about me, and and I'm asking them about them. So, I mean, the welcoming for a guy that they don't necessarily know coming to their door, that for me is just emblematic of what our community stands for. I want to make sure that the values of Dundee, Benson, that the whole district are really emphasized in the legislature. I think you're going to hear me be a real advocate and a real supporter of the values that we have and fight for those. Yeah.
Yep. Well said. Yeah. Even this Lincoln boy loves the Dundee and Benson area of Omaha. It's where
I did my kickoff at Oodalali, and I don't know if you're familiar with Oodalali, but I was down at the bar right below it for my kickoff, and it was so much fun. People were walking by. I think a few people just popped in off the street, and I wanted to create a welcoming environment and a place that's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, Josh Livingston, how can people find out more about your campaign?
Yeah, so you can go to my website at livingstonfornebraska.com. I'm on Facebook at Livingston for Nebraska, Instagram. Reach out. I'd love to connect with everybody in the community as best I can. We're going to be doing a lot of activities in the community. I keep saying that my responsibility, if I'm going to ask for your vote, is to get out and earn it. And I'm going to do everything I can to earn your vote.
Very good. Josh, we won't make this one and done. I got a lot of legislative candidates to get through this coming year, but I know this district's important. And we don't be a stranger. Call anytime. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah, this was great. I'm really excited. And, when we start getting into some more of the issues, I think that you and I could have some fun conversations about that.
Absolutely. We'll make it happen. Thanks, Josh, for joining us on the show today. And best of luck in your race for the Nebraska legislature. We'll be checking back as the race heats up. And hey, I wanted to announce that we're launching a campaign to thank our Patreon members, also known as Friends of Dan. So look for exclusive content that only you will get. And if you're not yet a member, hop on over to the Patreon page to sign up. You'll be helping support the #1 political podcast in Nebraska. Thanks to the Parsons team who made this show possible. I really appreciate all the help, guys and gals. Hey, that's today's show. Thanks for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.